what's going on, players and playettes? It's your personal hero, Tim Cant, here for Loopmasters, but I must insist on you calling me Miss Jackson if you're nasty, because that's right, we're going to make some tech house with Mihalis Safras. Nasty tech house. No time for any jokes about how tech house is boring. Let's roll those beats. Naturally, when making a tech house beat and bass line, the first thing you want to do is find a nice solid kick drum. The kick that appealed to me the most from the Mihalis Safras Nasty Tech House pack was SAF Kick 21. However, I felt like its attack stage was a little bit much, so I moved the start position of the sample to a few cycles in to mellow it out slightly. I sequenced this in a 4-to-the-floor pattern, and used Live's utility to monoize the kick so that it sits dead center in the mix. I then searched for a closed hat and picked SAF closed hat 16. I sequenced this on the 1st, 2nd and 4th 16th note of each beat, leaving the 3rd 16th free for an open hat. I chose SAF Open Hat 02 for the open hat, and I wanted this to sit naturally in the mix with the closed hat. However, the closed hat had a weighty low end compared to the open hat. To remedy this, I applied FabFilter Pro Q3 to the closed hat and high-passed it. Next, it's time for a clap. I really wanted something clean sounding and not too heavy to keep the beat rolling, so I selected SAF Clap 08. This sat in the mix like a dream, so I didn't need to process it at all. However, I did add a -6 dB ghost clap on the 1st 16th after the last clap of a 2-bar sequence to provide a slight bit of rhythmic variation. We've got a groove going now, but it's not as rolling as I'd like, which means it's time to call on that classic and much underappreciated sound, a Roland TR-909 ride. Thankfully, Mihalis Safras Nasty Tech House includes exactly the sound we need in the form of SAF symbol 04, which I sequenced on every beat under the kick. Now we've got a basic beat, it's time for some bass. I auditioned a bunch of bass sounds and settled on SAF C Syn Bass 12. Without any processing, this isn't a particularly interesting sound, but what drew me to it was that it had a solid bottom end with a bit of character in the mids and tops. This means it's an ideal candidate for filtering. I loaded the bass one-shot into Live's simpler sampler instrument, though any sampler will do. To make the bass line, I first worked out which key was best to play the bass in so that it sounded in tune with the kick, and this turned out to be F. I set the sampler's max number of voices to 1 to avoid any unwanted overlaps, then programmed a bass line that had a slight funky disco influence without being too obvious. I then used Simpler's low-pass filter, modulated by an envelope with a short decay time to rapidly take out the highs after the start of each note. This is basically possible in any sampler, however I did take advantage of Simpler's circuit type option, selecting the MS2 type and using a bit of resonance and drive to bring out the sound. This enhances the bass's low end, and I don't want this to interfere with the kick, so I sidechain compress the bass using the kick as a trigger. That's a basic tech house of beat and bass alright, but I wanted to flesh it out a little and give it a touch more character. So I selected SAF Cowbell 03 and created a little riff on an audio track in Live, using the audio clip's transposition feature to make sure it was in the same key as the rest of the elements. I also used FabFilter Pro R to add a little reverb. I felt this worked well, so I also decided to add a touch of spin reverb to the clap on the last beat. To emphasise the start of the 2-bar sequence, I used the characteristic crash SAF symbol 13 pitched down with a simple delay on it. I should probably point out that I did try experimenting with a bit of swing on this beat, specifically using some 57% 16th note MPC swing on the closed hats, and while that's usually something I'm very keen on for house and garage, in this particular context I felt like it was to the detriment of the groove, so I left the hats running straight techno style. The final touch was Ozone 8 maximised on the master, which reduces the dynamic range and makes everything sound louder. Well, I know you're always your own worst critic, but I definitely completely dominated tech house there. And if you agree too, why not click the subscribe button and that funny little bell so you get a notification for the next time one of these drops. Peace!